30th, 2024. We're focused on a digital world town hall meeting. This week is wrapping up the month of July, and we actually have some exciting news for the first meeting of next month, which I'll tell you a little bit about in the end. First off, I'm going to start off with a simple video. For those that are aware, we do a real simple agenda for the first half. We review some of the things that have transpired over the last week, and then general Q&A. But we're going to start out with a video around what we talked with Clear Kids, and then also with Clear GM at the end. So
this is for parents, those unflagging warriors for proper nutrition, education, friendship, and reasonable bedtimes. Our front line is the clock, the diminishing moments we have, and how to make the most of them. The last thing we need is for daily skirmishes to break out over media time and content, to undermine the minutes we need to love, to nurture, to teach. That's why there's Clear Kids. Set it once and forget it. Approve apps and screen time. Done. Clear Kids gives you the peace of mind the victor deserves. Clear Kids, a parent's best friend.
So this last week, we had a wonderful opportunity to connect with some folks, primarily around that topic of Clear Kids, but it even goes further than that. It ties into some of the stuff around gateway management, which we'll talk a little bit about later on, but we're getting some feedback somewhere. Come on, guys. We've got an audience here for those that are not seeing it.
Perhaps it was the middle of January in the present year.
Oh.
That I first looked up.
That's what it was. Sorry. Thank you. Guys all know what the drill is. So this is the live audience. This is the agenda. So again, grateful for those that are here helping with some of the setup and some of the hosting and questions. This is a private membership association. Some of the stuff we talked about may be forward-looking. First off, some of the most exciting news and some of the topics are wrapped around what we call, let me pull this back up. There we go. So what is called the Utah Stock Exchange. So that's one of the things that's transpired this last week, is focusing on stock, equities, and commodities. And we're trying to determine, there's a group of us, primarily folks that are focused around commodities. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's going to be something that is actually based and domiciled, hopefully from a regulatory standpoint, a stock-based system within the state of Utah with full SEC approval in the jurisdiction of the United States of America, but it will tie in other ecosystems, primarily around, and actually I'll jump to this part of it. So you'll see there's these commodities elements, and then equities, and then currencies. You usually don't see all of those things in one system that are interchangeable. You may see them like with companies like Fidelity or Ameritrade, where they have these different departments that focus on commodities, equities, and currencies, but they're not interchangeable with one another. And I believe that as this new digital world and ecosystem enables, you'll see different organizations adopting things like this. So this is some pretty exciting news. Some of the stuff that we're focused on is a simple approach. For those who have been watching for the last couple of years, you've seen how we've focused within the region of the Pacific in helping to bring together what we call the Pacific Union, which is where multiple different organizations can actually be involved within the Pacific, but they're doing it based upon standards. Some of them, it may just be getting just started. Some of them may be full-blown countries with their own currencies, with their own passports, with their own driver's licenses, with their own abilities to govern, but they're looking for kind of the future. Some of them may just want to do something different in the financing world, but they're all saying we'll actually come together in unity to be able to work together with how we identify folks and how we work together. Now, this Pacific Union, you'll notice there's some organizations that are not, or some countries that are not in the middle of this. So when we look at it, originally Australia wasn't there. That's actually changed. It's not signed yet, but there's actually a full-blown proposal for Australia. That was an inbound request. The other thing that's exciting news this last week is all around Mexico. And so we'll talk about the Mexican country, which this is a fully enabled system where people can log in, they can create companies, and one of the other big modules around it is actually health that's coming. So historically, we haven't had health as a part of a module. For those that are aware, the Clear companies are service providers to the digital world, which is what we're talking about. And the Clear companies over the years, have basically known that health, so in 2026, will actually be a part of it. It's continuing to get pushed out, even though there's maturing sides of things. For instance, this BH telehealth or this I2I network. This is the ability to communicate with the human body through yes or no questions. There's technologies that have come out of this that are very mature. They're going through markets, getting full FDA approval, or the ability to do quantum entanglement remotely. So these are companies that the Clear companies have actually purchased over the years to help enable some of the things in the health world. There was one other company that we actually went through a full term sheet on and an asset purchase agreement, and right at the last minute, it didn't happen. And to be honest with you, I wished that one happened and another one that we did, which I won't mention, didn't happen, but it is what it is, and hindsight's always 20/20. But that being said, health is going to be a very big part of what's coming within this Mexican environment, primarily because we have I shouldn't say we, it's inside of the country of Mexico, which, by the way, I learned something new along this process. Did you know that the actual country of Mexico is called the United Mexican States? Did you know that? I think it's amazing. So while we were going through this, one of the things they talked about was it's not just identity. So for those of you who are familiar with Mexican life or Hawaiian life or Tuvalu life or Saudi life or even American life, these different apps give people their own ability to have their own identity, their own financial systems, their own voting systems, their own asset management systems. You can register things, you can license things, and it's as simple as just a click. So I'll literally just grab my phone. So this is a new ecosystem for those that have not been paying attention. I've logged in with just a fingerprint. I've opened up my Life app. And by the way, one Life app can reside on a phone. Multiple wallets can reside on a phone from different jurisdictions. So you could actually have, I just logged in with 5-factor authentication, most secure login that humanity has today. I would challenge anyone to question that. But you can log in and you can create different environments. For instance, I'll actually, I'll stay there for those that are not aware. So just in this very office, we had a couple different organizations that were created earlier today. These are organizations that I did a couple days ago. But from a public standpoint, people can come in and just click on a little search bar and they can see. So for instance, this was actually created earlier today, this business here. You can also see other assets. You can see individuals, all from within this ecosystem. And that's some of the benefits or value that this new system actually provides. But there's so much more. Some of the keys are going to be around land management, asset management. This is also one of the things that will test some of the multilingual capabilities within the site. And so we're excited. We're excited for the opportunity to be able to serve the country of Mexico, especially as they transition in a new leader. So the 2nd of June, there was a new leader that came in. We look forward to working with her and her team. And in the interim, we want to be able to get as far as we possibly can to make sure that they know and understand what is potentially possible. So that's some of the big stuff that we've worked on. One around really a kid's phone and one around a couple different jurisdictions. The biggest one that we can talk about is within the Mexican country. And it would be wonderful to have Mexico as a part of this Pacific Union and a massive vendor or partner there. There's about 140 million citizens within the country. To give you context, in the United States of America, that number's just over double, so about 330 million. I guess that was before a lot of the blur of the border got really from Mexico to the United States of America. Actually, that's so cool. So it really wouldn't be that. It would be from the United Mexican States to the United States of America. That is so amazing. But basically, there's a particular part of Mexico that we'll be working with to roll out a pilot. It's about 50,000 individuals, and we'll be working on pieces of these as well as some neat new things, one that may be around an exchange and one that's primarily going to be around health. And so I'd like to just jump into some of the exchange stuff, primarily because it's a really big part of what we're talking about. It helps to enable what we call the on-ramp or off-ramp, and how people can then exchange value along the way. So for those that are new, you basically have 3 phases to what's being focused on: the Pacific, and then North and South America, and a reunion of what is called an eagle and the condor. Next week, the same time, we will probably have 20 to 50 people in addition to what our audience has today, and they'll be coming from those different areas, so Northern and Southern America. There'll also be a lot that we'll touch within the country of Africa. So, by the way, a lot of these different countries, we've been able to, I don't know how, but almost everything that has a dot on it, we've been able to lock up the web domain with the .country element around it. Different conversation, but hugely important. This is an interface that is a future interface, primarily talked around how the exchange within the actual environments will actually potentially interface. So today we're used to things like agreements, assets. I wonder if I can zoom in here for you. No. So we're used to different types of services. One of the new ones, in addition to health, will be this exchange side of it. You know, a lot of people have said, why haven't you gotten into this in the future? Or why haven't you launched these types of assets? On one hand, we're very, very conservative, but on the other hand, we're very bold in what we'll actually link together and give to humanity, especially if it's got a solid basis for what is true and correct principles, so to speak. And so a lot of the details that you're seeing inside of here will get spelled out in time. And we're grateful for the opportunity to start working with a whole new group of folks that we've actually been fellow travelers over the years. 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, bumped into some of these folks. But it's neat to see how it all kind of surfaces and comes back together. So that's a big topic, as well as how you actually procure silver and gold based assets in rounds or bars or note form, and then how that will actually work within commodities, equities, and exchange and currencies. And a lot of this may be foreign to people, but really, when it's all said and done, when you look at commodities, especially here in Utah, there's massive reasons for it. People don't understand the value of the Great Salt Lake is actually salt brine. Inside of salt brine, you can do 2 things. Lithium iron phosphate comes from it, which actually makes batteries for a lot of things. One of the things that was really neat this last couple of weeks was I actually bought a lawnmower, and the lawnmower is electric. And it was like, it's clean, it's not stinky, it's not loud. It really cuts well. It's not crazy heavy. You can actually think when you're doing it, or you put some headphones on. I mean, it's just really, it was a very interesting perspective. We'll see how long it lasts, but it all runs off of batteries. And so it's like, well, where do these batteries come from? A lot of us just take it for granted. Well, salt brine is one of the core elements of actually getting those. And the Great Salt Lake has a ton of salt brine because it's all dried up. That's why they call it salt flats. So the salt brine then can actually, when you actually pull the magnesium out of it, or at least the form of it, you can also get a very high-end fertilizer. So you take that, then you take a lot of the other exports that comes out of the state of Utah, which is a core on the commodity side, such as copper, nickel, and I actually tried to go up to one of the gold and silver mines, which is called Kennecott. It comes right out. It's like one of the biggest mines in the world, and the biggest export is actually gold, believe it or not. And for those that are not aware, it's actually currency. Gold is currency as well as silver in the state of Utah from the Constitution that's built in. So when we look at a lot of the commodities and the way to be able to trace these commodities, there's going to be a large opportunity around what we're actually rolling out. Now, this is not the digital world. This is not Clear Companies, but it's an association and a group of folks inside of Utah that's coming together to create this commodities, equities, currency ecosystem that hopefully will have regulatory-based assets that will compete with the New York Stock Exchange in the historical environment, and then possibly work with some of the beautiful things that are happening down in Texas. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the future. But when we talk about these components that come from these types of things, whether you're talking about robots, and that's another thing, it's not going to be about the petrodollar in the future. It's going to be around the auto dollar, the home dollar, and the phone dollar. When I say phone dollar, I'm talking about communication. And so I won't dig into some of the details around it, but it's really important. And when we talk about Salt Lake, think about like an inner port that's connecting to the Pacific. The Pacific is full of what? Water. 40 billion acres of water, 25,000 islands, and most of them actually struggle to have fresh water. Well, desalination plants that are actually self-reliant, so they actually run their own power to run their own membranes and run the salt brine through one and fresh water through the other. It's a natural gift, but you've got to start building with water and land connected together in a very different, unique way, which we can talk about in the future. But one of the things that's really advancing on the Clear Home side of things, along with the Punapod folks, namely Carl and the team is getting very solid, very matured. Some of the things we've bumped into are problems around entitlement, primarily with cities. I want to report that today will actually be is a step to actually work to solve a lot of that. But having homes that are built that can actually be reviewed from some of the folks in Maui to approve 940 homes with a factory that's built here in Utah that will then enable a factory that is actually going to be built in Hawaii. But the thing that's important to note is these are run off the same types of materials: aluminum, steel, lithium, etc. And there's actually a lot of silver that ties to it. So this ties to the auto dollar, the home dollar, the communication dollar, and it's not focused around the petrodollar anymore. So when you think about currencies, equities, and commodities, imagine an ecosystem that literally can interchange those. And they're built on real world currencies, notes, bars, coins, that are tied to jurisdictions that actually care about lining that up, whether we're talking about silver, whether we're talking about gold, whether we're talking about reward systems at the bottoms with merchants that take it, or physical assets or digital assets that act as a form of a receipt, and then roll out and connect together with different phases. So again, that phase that we've rolled out here, and for those that are not aware, the phase 3 that we're plugging into it's really been seeds that were planted a very long time ago, like 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, physically within these environments, and all of the technology coming together to actually work as one. The goal is to have the Americas just as involved as some of these other countries that we talk about with the BRICS ecosystems. Then when we talk about different, and I won't even go through the details that are here just because they're. So this is basically big news, new stock exchange that has currency, equities, and commodities that also ties to an exchange that literally people can log in with that same scan. So to get into this is the same type of thing. So for instance, I'll pull open, because some of you it may not be clicking for you. So what I'll do is I'll just log in to the Hawaiian ecosystem just as fast. So again, using 5-factor authentication, no usernames, no passwords in this new digital ecosystem, very secure. So you can see here, there's no exchange that you can see here. There's some wallets, which I won't talk about just yet, but you see no exchange, you see no health, you see no exchange and no health within this environment within Mexico. But imagine if those jurisdictions, like for those that don't know, the Hawaiians and the Mexicans actually had treaties long ago. They actually had, there was actually on the Yucatan Peninsula, here, I'll pull up on a map real quick. On the Yucatan Peninsula, there's actually this wonderful railway that they started, and they bumped into a lot of problems, but it just so happens that they actually just recently, like last month, solved those problems. So most of us understand that the way to be able to get around the world, so for instance, it all goes through what? Do they go down all the way around this big ecosystem here? No. They go through what's called the narrow neck of land in Panama. But what a lot of people didn't know, and there's a gentleman, Mr. Green, on the phone that taught me this, and this Yucatan Peninsula is a personal experience where my journey started with all of this crazy, the tribes, the indigenous folks, how and purpose. It started in the 90s. I was given a surprise to go down to Cancun on a birthday. And I was like, I can't stand this Ritz-Carlton. I want to just go out and just see the people and see the environment. And lo and behold, we bumped into Chichen Itza, Tulum, and Xcaret, which were pyramids down here on the Yucatan Peninsula. And I didn't understand who these people were. And through some studying and beautiful things, I started understanding line over line. And I still probably have a lot to learn. But the point is there's actually, in addition to this Panama Canal, which was dug and boats just basically go through locks, there's actually a railway that's going through here. So a boat comes up, unloads its load, gets on a train, and gets pushed through to be able to then get on another boat and come across. And what was interesting is the actual Kingdom of Hawaii had trade agreements with the Mexican ecosystem to do that long ago. And there's going to be a high-speed portion of it that's actually also going through here. But how does it get monetized? How does it get adopted? And a lot of that, I believe, will actually tie to some of the stuff that we're talking about with currencies, equities, commodities, because commodities are all about taking it out of the earth and getting it to a place where it can either be refined or productized and then consumed in some form or another. And the technology we're talking about is not just good about financing that, but also tracking it. And when you track it and finance it at the same time, it creates a whole nother ecosystem of value for humanity. So with that being said, we're excited to announce the relationship and potential relationship within the Mexican country for the future. So those are really the key points that we'd like to report out this last week. Unless others on the call want to discuss any of the specifics or have any questions or comments or thoughts, now's your time. Any feedback or like, oh, that doesn't make sense, or we questioned it this way, or maybe there's some risks there, or anything that folks have? No? Okay, then I'll play the Clear GM video because that ties to the Clear Kids topics, that ties to a phone that is actually for parents. For those of you that know, most of my kids are just all grown and making their own choices. We always talk about this: teach your kids true and correct principles and then let them govern themselves. Well, they're governing themselves probably even better than I govern myself. But the reality is when they were younger, I really worried about this whole digital ecosystem. And not necessarily negative things they could get into, but what it could take from them, from the value of time and how interference and confusion of what this could come into their lives. Nowadays, people talk about pornography and bullying and just different weird things that are negative, social media, but it's really interesting to see how really ultimately we're here to learn. But I do believe that there still needs to be an opportunity. And some folks, 2 or 3 folks this last week came together and said, no, we need to make another run at this. We actually did this and this and this to patent this and do this and block this. And to be honest with you, you guys have all heard me talk about how we need to remove pride and ego and greed and just do what's right for the right reasons. And I wish I could say that was the case. I think what really happened, I think we had a lot of that going on, but there was a meeting with a time frame. We had a limited hour, and we were right at that hour, and it just pushed it over. I hope that it'll come back because there's so much work that was actually done primarily around the same types of things. So I'm going to go ahead and play a video that ties to it while you guys think of questions. Otherwise, we're going to end up wrapping up. So here we go.
Now more than ever, we need
And pull that window over so everyone can see it. Here we are.
control over the world we live in. The one we build for our children. The one we create for future generations. Over the last 2 decades, the physical world and the digital world have come together. What we see in one is recorded in the other. And too often what we see is unwanted. What follows us is unsolicited. What pushes its way into the lives of our children is uninvited. At Clear, we believe that every parent deserves to sleep well knowing those unwanted visitors are locked out of the lives of their children. It's more than parental controls. It's more than the right to keep our children's lives private. It's about freedom. That feeling you get when you know the values you base your life on, raise your children by, are safe. Clear GM. Control, freedom, peace of mind.
So we got like almost 5 years put into that. And I don't believe that, one, it's been realized or recognized with all the potential and capabilities, and it would be nice to be able to push that all the way through. Just like so many other things, like, before the call, we were talking about a Clear tablet and a Clear laptop. They're on my desk. They really work, but they're not to a point where, one, we have the justification to get a return on investment to fund it. It's too much of a fragmented focus. And in October, November of every year, we focus on one goal for the next year, and it just never got prioritized. And same thing with really this issue. What we're seeing is not necessarily control or protection for children online, which I think is very important. But what we're actually seeing rise to the surface is actually a bigger issue around human rights, around the basics of privacy, the basics of abilities to travel. And I think if travel and privacy get tied and solved, a lot of the things around children can now actually be controlled. The problem is, I don't know if there's parents on this call that had Apple phones, or maybe they still do, but the Apple phones, a parent doesn't own, even if the child, let's say the child's 12, and let's say the parent bought it for the child. And you go to Apple and you say, I want to be able to delete this account or remove this or have access to this. Apple does not give it. Why? Because the device is not actually transferred ownership to the parent or the owner or the person that purchased it. So not only do they not own the hardware, they don't own the data, and they don't have the rights. The rights is what we're talking about. Human rights are more important. And I'm not saying, I shouldn't say more important, but just as important. And at least from a sequence, we've got to stop certain things. And the identity side of it is where everything starts and stops. If you don't solve identity, nothing else matters. And so being able to solve identity first, then health, then, the things we're talking about with jurisdictions and access and, all these other things can then go on. So let's say it's assets. So you've got, usually parents that take care of kids, and then kids will take care of parents, and then the parents pass on. And hopefully what we've worked for in life can go down to the next generation, whether it's material things or just straight up lessons. But, we really believe that identity is a very important area. And that's why we've worked so hard to get this Pacific Union stood up. So this Pacific Union is actually going to do some things that are similar to what the European Union's doing with GDRP, but this will actually do it with what's called DDRP or DDPR. And that literally, let's see if we can, yeah, it's absolutely, yeah, this guy right here. So this is actually what it is. It's the Digital Data Protection and Regulation. So it's a form of protection around identity and profiling. So there'll be some protections for parents, but ultimately it's for everyone. And providing notice on how governance can actually be managed legally within the jurisdiction of the whole earth. And so you'll see a lot more that's actually coming with this. And it'll tie a lot when this Real ID actually goes live here in 2025. So May 7th, 2025. So I'm going to stop blabbing, see if there's any questions. If not, we'll be wrapping up early today. Thoughts, comments? We went over Clear Kids, we went over Utah Stock Exchange, we went over the opportunity in Mexico, and we went over Clear GM, and then GDPR within the Pacific Union. So lots of topics.
So I have a question, Michael. Obviously there's parallel systems, parallel worlds. Now, if I opt into anything decentralized, will the governments be able to force us to be in a centralized system? How can we?
The real gift. Did you have more to your question? No.
No, I'm trying to think of how to say, but I think you get what I'm trying to ask.
I totally get what you're saying, and I believe, as spirits in bodies, we have the opportunity to choose. And that is what's actually being taken from us because we really don't have a choice today. And so what you're seeing with the digital world and these systems are going to enable a choice and a conversation to be had. For instance, about 2 months ago, I went to a constitutional sheriff event, and then I went and met with some associations for sheriffs. And to be honest with you, they welcome it. They welcome digital ID that's decentralized. They welcome license plates, kind of like these. You know, they're like, hey, if it ties into the system and it actually does this and gives us the data, you know, we're not getting pushbacks from the sheriffs. Where we do see some real concern is within police stations, within cities or towns. And I think a lot of it goes to the point of what the Pacific Union can actually do. And as crazy as this sounds, they will actually have to create lawsuits against these police stations. They will have to create lawsuits against the airlines and the different environments that don't allow identity. So think about it. If you go stay in a hotel room, when you go there, what do they ask you for? ID and payment.
ID.
Yeah. And so if we go and say, hey, I'll go back a page here real fast and then go way up. If we come in and we say, hey, like, let's say, I think we were in the hotel category. So let's say all they're going to do is, let's say Marriott accepted a decentralized ID and decentralized payments. Now, they don't have to do payments, but it's an option, right? So what if there's an ecosystem of vendors that are currently taking Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and they're going through the normal payment system into the different rails of like Stripe and different payment systems. So there's many days and fees versus real time, no fees, depending on the jurisdiction. So think about it, just no fees, real time versus fees and a lot of time. It's going to be a no-brainer in the future as long as there's a responsible conversion, so to speak, around being able to have identity that's decentralized. So they've got to validate who the people are. And I'm confident that using technology in requesting. So for instance, I'll go back over to this ecosystem here. So when you go and look at an ID, and I kind of show this all the time. Let's just say this gentleman here, I don't even know what this is because it's in Spanish, but you notice that the last name is not there. Middle name, last name is not there. In some cases, you don't even see the date of birth, right? So you won't see date of birth. You just see maybe even a blurry picture. So through a click, a request can go and says, okay, now I see the first name. Now I see the photo. Maybe another request goes, I see the date of birth and I see the last name. But the user's in control of how that information is actually shared. That's the difference. And so when you're asking your question around adoption and recognition, I think it comes back to changing the conversation. And we have to think differently. We as individuals are born here on this amazing earth, not in a jurisdiction that we're then a citizen, maybe a country, or maybe a state that we're a resident, but we as individuals choose. Are we going to be identified a certain way? Are we going to be married a certain way? Is marriage even important? Are we going to have children and identify the children a certain way with birth certificates? What is the jurisdiction the birth certificate's in? How does it actually get recognized? Does it tie into bigger systems? We actually choose pieces of those things, and then we go on to choose, I have a vehicle. Maybe it's a motorcycle, maybe it's a bicycle, maybe it's a gun, maybe it's, but I have something that I'm actually going to register. Why? Because they create laws and says you have to register it. Well, is that a law that's constitutional? And when you dig into some of the constitutional stuff, which I actually started reading some of the amendments in Constitution within the Mexican country, and it was like mind-blowing. Some of the simple freedoms that they have down there, as well as in the United States of America. The problem is, if we do not stand up for what we know is right and true and correct, we lose that freedom. We lose that right. And this gives us a choice to say, I want to do it centrally or I want to do it decentrally. And then vendors can say, I'll accept centralized or decentralized or none of them or both. And I guarantee if they say none of them, they're going to be out of business. If they pick one or the other, there's going to be a lot of people. For instance, I watched an article or I read something, I didn't even read the whole article, but I just looked at the top and it says, Tom Hanks was rejected from this and this and this because somebody didn't want to do business with them because they have this woke mentality. I'm not going to dig into woke mentality and all that other stuff. But what I can say is humanity needs a choice. And that's what this is. I can tell you that the state that I'm currently based in, there is legislation that's going through houses and different bodies to try and get approved to say, can I get a digital ID that's actually decentralized versus the current digital ID that's already being deployed. Now, we're not talking hypotheticals. I'm in one of the 3 states in the United States of America that's fully deploying digital ID. And what people don't understand is once that digital ID is linked to payments and then linked to a device like a phone, it's game over. There was actually a really interesting video. I wish I could find it, but it's neat to be around people that see this and understand it, but it's also even better to be around people that are like, we're going to do something about it. We're not just going to sit by. We're not just going to let this isn't about, I know we're in an election year right now, and there's a lot of, and we just came off an assassination, and there's crazy stuff going on in society. But if we take a step back, this life is a blink. Like I had a neighbor this last week who literally, and even another gentleman, these are 2 amazing people, healthy, vibrant. One, 11 days notice and gone. Like literally. The other one, 7 days it was about 7 months that she had known about an issue, but only 7 days, and 5 of the 7 days she was out most of the time. So 2 days of really knowing that they're going goodbye. Now these people, a lot of deaths in our world, we don't get to say goodbye. All I'm trying to say is life is short, every day matters, and we've got to look at it from kind of the long-term perspective. And I know that for those of you that plug in every single week and say, well, what's the advancements this week? And show us the progress that, you talked about this a year ago. Is it implemented? What we're showing is a cadence of accountability and results. Even though we may be a super small team, we can make a big difference if we're united. And it's not just the people building the tech. It's the people just like you, Danielle, that are asking the questions and then talking to other people about it and saying, hey, there's really something here. There's really a different path here. And some of us may just say, you know what, I don't believe it. It's just, or some people say change is good and it's just going to happen. It's inevitable. And we'll be like a little fishy in the water and just go down the stream or not, and I don't think we have to fight fights just to fight it, because again, life is too short. But I do believe that these things that we're talking about must be stood up against. There must be an alternative. And as you said, Daniel, a parallel path and a parallel system to create an alternative. Go ahead.
I'm all for choosing. I'm all for choosing. If somebody wants to stay in the centralized world, go ahead. But I just don't want to be threatened. I don't want it forced. I want to be able to choose. And maybe I'm living in the wrong part of the world because I don't see, I went to Apple today to have a diagnostic run on my laptop, which I don't like, which I would love to have a clear laptop, Michael. So I went to Apple today and I can't put my earphones, can't plug my earphones into my laptop. He said, my speakers are fine. Just get yourself an external speaker. And I said, well, thanks, but I don't feel like being surveyed. Oh, no, Apple doesn't do that. I said, yeah, I think Apple does that. Oh, no. Nobody can come and edit anything, and we don't. And he went into this whole explanation, and I thought, really? So, I don't know. I'm really starting to think that I live in the wrong part of the world, that I can't find anybody in my world that, very few people, I should say, not anybody, but very few people that think like me. And I don't want to be in the centralized world. I'm so tired of being told what to do, what to eat, Michael, it's like, I need to get out of this.
We're trying to build a technological alternative, the physical reality of it, and even the biological. When we talk about, somebody said amen. When we talk about, what they're doing with whether it's viruses. Go ahead. Mr. Green, did you have something to say?
Yes, hello everybody. Mariano Green here.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome.
My pleasure. So I don't know if you can help me, Michael, because I cannot share my screen. I just send it to you an image from where the interoceanic train is going to
Beautiful.
cross.
Right here. Yeah. Sharing it. Okay.
So that's the current route. It's already set it up. It's already running. It has just started a couple of weeks ago, actually. So it's gonna connect the two oceans.
Wow.
Those kind of mega projects having only been able to complete because this new government overcome the dictatorship that Mexico has had for more than 70 years. And the only way that
Go ahead.
The only way that Mexico could been able to overcome the dictatorship was because former president, the current president that has already finished his mandate and now is going to start the new one. The previous election won by 53%.
Wow.
But the previous election, the presidency was stolen for the other candidates. Completely, you know?
Yeah.
And he runs again until he was able to win this election by 53%, more or less. Claudia Sheinbaum, right now, the new president that is going to start his presidency in September, won by 59%, actually, almost 60%.
Wow.
The vote, globally. Just to put ourselves in perspective, right now, there were also elections in Venezuela. The dictator Maduro didn't let the other guy take the power, and now it's a civil war right now in Venezuela. And the only way that we can see all the news and also the Venezuelan people can be able to share it is with Twitter, or now X.com. So you can all just search there Venezuela, and you will see all the news that is happening right now. Just explore and just Venezuela, and you will find everything right now. Like happening right now. No, Venezuela. No Venezolanos. Like Venezuela. Like type Venezuela.
This one here,
Cira. No,
still wrong.
yeah. Venezuela is just, yeah. Right now, there is so much thing going on. So many protests, so many happening. So many people dying right now in the regime of Maduro. The dictatorship is killing hundreds of people right now. And that's happening right now. A lot. Yeah, but you search Venezolana, it's Venezuela. Just type it up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Oh.
There's a lot of,
So this kind of a project is very necessary for all humanity, for us to be able to, yeah, Venezuela, yeah, like that.
you know, when we talk about voting, this can absolutely provide the
That's not much.
transparency.
Go a little bit upper. Go a little bit upper.
Let's do
No,
this.
Venezuela is perfect. No, not Venezuela. No. You were right in the previous one. Yeah, like that, Venezuela. Yeah.
Well, the problem is it won't show trending based upon what that was, but you're spot on. I mean, the key is if we can have systems that can actually provide voting and transparency around it. For instance, just right here in my office earlier today, we had 3 or 4 people voting on one page, and they can see their vote counting, they can see it changing, and it's actually being logged. And like I even voted for one and then changed it and voted for another. All of it's being logged until the actual voting ends. And it's not like the existing systems where it's a black box. Anybody can fill out their ballots, but you don't know what it's actually recorded ultimately. And that's where a lot of the fraud could come in. So I would question, what systems are they running down there? And then, you know, in all reality, technology is something that can actually set us free instead of enslave us. And I would say a large portion of humanity in life has been enslaved because of what technology's brought to us. And I would even go on to say a lot of it is because of Apple. Apple is intentionally doing certain things. And I'm not saying it's just Apple. I'd say it's secret combinations that revolve around the systems behind it, you know, whether it's money, whether it's health, whether it's, you know, greed, all of these secret combinations tied to it. And that's what you see with these power. I mean, you're going to see governments in the future that won't actually run off of a president or a prime minister or a king, but you'll see things that'll run based upon people's perspective and councils and service providers. And that's one of the things that you actually see built into these systems are these councils. So let's say you go into different jurisdictions, which I learned there's 31 states within the country of Mexico. And these they have their own municipalities within each one of them. What if you could vote?
You're cutting out, Michael, really badly.
Oh, that's too bad.
No, well,
Well,
I hear very well.
you do. Okay, so maybe it's on your side,
Yes.
Daniel. So the point is imagine if someone wants to just vote within a particular jurisdiction, let's say Baja California, and you want to actually vote there. Well, you have a web browser and you have a phone that both have geo access, and then you can link that to voter IDs as well if they want to. Really, ultimately, I believe big data is actually the value. You have a lot of jurisdictions that question, well, who can actually vote? And you know, like when I was in New Zealand, if you're paying a power bill, you don't have to be a resident, you don't have to be a citizen, but you can vote. Or in other parts of the world, like Vanuatu, you know, they wanted everyone to have a voice, but the voices were actually magnified if you were of a certain lineage or descent. You know, there's different perspectives, and each jurisdiction is going to have their own driver around what it is. I can stay here in America, you know, there's a big controversy whether you're a citizen or not, and whether you've crossed over a border illegally or not. And, it's all by design. What's just sad is, okay, but let's have a fair and transparent system based upon where people are at, so you don't have fraudulent systems that can actually do certain things. And it's not just around where your geography and located from a physical standpoint, or how they can spoof that, but it ties to how you actually operate your life, if you're really a human or not in doing certain things. And technology absolutely can validate that, but to be able to get it to scale and be validated, you have to have the individual owning their own identity and not some central system. So think about it this way. We as individuals basically today go and plug all of our systems. I'll see if I can find a slide. You know what is a really good one is this Hawaiian Kingdom. The Hawaiian Kingdom, by the way, there's some wonderful things that are next week or so. So there's different elements, but this is the Hawaiian Kingdom. So the Kingdom of Hawaii, watch for something happening over the next week or two. But you can see that within this type of architecture, there's an element of where the individual basically puts their data into systems versus the individual owning their data and allowing systems to tie to them. That is the difference. So the individual is actually the central part of it, if you will. That's one of the big values. So, for me, it's really difficult to be able to see a lot of the different societies and countries and cultures that literally they've been oppressed, or they've been, for instance, and it sounds like in this case in Venezuela, it all comes down to power and control. And then what do they do with the power and the control? Well, they can create currencies and manipulation, and then, all the other things. I mean, we talk about some of the things that happened within the Hawaiian or the Mexico elections. These individuals, every single one of these 20 beautiful faces, I don't know if they're good people, bad people, but they're humans. They're dead. Within 2024, they were killed, assassinated while running for some form of presidency. This is in America, we're talking about, stray bullets, and don't get me wrong, that assassination with President Trump was wrong. But the voices of these individuals and the families, they can't be ignored. They can't be not heard. And I can only imagine the craziness in Venezuela right now. These are brothers and sisters to all of us. We're all one family, and we need to care about unity that ties to that. I challenge you to come next week. Next week will be a very special week. We'll be talking a lot about, where we come from and who we are. And when we really understand the digital world and how it operates off of this element called native. And native, you'll see a lot more in the future. For instance, this is kind of an example of, you have a native Liberty coin or round that then turns into a digital representation of that then can be shared in the digital world that we're talking about. It'll also link to other systems, and how it links and exchanges is some of the topics that we're just bringing you up to speed on. So we're grateful for those that are helping with some of that. Like, there's some new people on the call today. I really believe that there's a Mecca here in Utah that's going to make a big difference, not only in Utah, but other parts of the United States. Idaho, Montana, Arizona, even Arizona, where a lot of these things have been very questionable. Texas, hopefully places like California and Oregon, they can stand up for what's right. And it's not the whole state per se, it's just the collective. Because if we can have our voices that are actually heard through voting systems, like real voting systems, like I'll pull up an example. I'm going to go to what we call the Republic for the United States of America. Now, let's say, you have American life, or Fiji life, or Vanuatu life, or Tuvalu life, and you want to actually vote. Let's say who's going to be running. People can literally, everybody on this call can literally cast their vote in real time. So watch this. So grab any of your Life apps. If any of the listeners on this call have a Life app, just grab it. And I'll go ahead and say, let's just select for Mr. Biden here. So if people want to actually vote for him, so I'm going to go ahead and just scan him to give you a show of how it works. So I'll go ahead and scan that, successful on my phone and on the interface, and you can see that there's actually a vote that's counted there. If someone else wants to vote for them, they can do the same thing, whether physical or remote. But what's beautiful about how it works is if you locked in the geography side of it, it's not going to work. Or if you try and scan multiple, it won't work. So there's a lot of security mechanisms that's built in, not only the voting process, but the identity process. And that's really where these things come together. The other thing is, if you notice here, this was actually expired as of the 20th. What are we at? So 10 days ago. But if I want to go and say I want to vote for it, it's got all the logics built into these systems. It's not some paper ballot that you run through a computer, so the poll's expired. So the point is imagine this being able to be deployed at scale, at mass, solving some of the things that you're talking about within this environment right here. So I'm going to stop blabbing. These are really two really, really good points. Thoughts, questions, other topics?
Got a question, Michael.
Hi, Margaret, go for it.
Okay, so the voting new decentralized system that you just demonstrated, so who created all of that? Did Clear?
That's what's beautiful, is we created the infrastructure for it as different divisions, but ultimately each country or jurisdiction can actually ask their own questions. I believe half the battle in life is actually figuring out what is the question. The other part is, what's the answer, and then doing it. But, to get the question to the masses, like we really don't even, ours is in November, right? You just have the elections in Venezuela just happened, and the elections in Mexico that just went through last month in June. They're running their own ecosystem. And that's the key, is if you decentralize the power, you give the local authorities the ability to ask the question and then to be able to see the voice of the people. Usually leaders will actually do what's right. Problem is, most of them usually don't have good data, or it's perverted in some form or the other. But imagine if we could actually do, like, as simple as a voting process as what I just showed you with that scan. Imagine if we could prove that that is actually 100 or 1,000 times better than the most secure process that humanity currently has. And I know many of you may think, I don't believe it. It's not really. It couldn't be that simple, but it actually can. That's what cryptography and blockchain and the systems underneath the identity systems that are here was originally intended for. It's a consensus. It's a timestamp. All of these thousands of systems say that vote happened. You can't make it up. And then you can tie reputation. So I'm going to pull up the digitalworld.earth. I'm going to click on services, or mouse over. I'm going to click on reputation. And it's not just the individual or the organization or the asset, but it's actually what people or organizations or entity get to select. So on the left, the individual can say, I'll share my data, or I'll share my actions, which are already taken from us anyways. So am I sending an email and I'm moving around? You don't have to share your location. You don't have to share what the email was about, which currently we do all of it. We literally log into the biggest mining system in the world, Google, and we put our email into their system, or we put our location into their system. And it keeps going. I won't even scare you with all of the other things around IMEI numbers and phones and meta tagging. And I mean, it's just, but if you could actually say, I will go ahead and share what I'm doing with calendar events, or maybe what I'm doing with medical, certain this or that. I'm not sharing my personal data, but I will prove that I'm a human, because a computer can't do the stuff that we're talking about. That's another thing that I would actually urge you to pay attention to. Pay attention to not just what they used to call deep fakes, but full on what you think you see didn't really happen. You have to discern to a whole nother level. And that's why identity and reputation in the future is going to be so important, because you can actually validate who you are, or you can validate who someone is with these types of systems. Whereas historically in the past, you can't. Like, you can't even validate someone's name. They may change their name. They may change their sex. They may change their whatever. But with a system like this, you can start validating, do they do what they say they're going to do? If they commit to pay a bill, did they pay a bill? You know, we're talking about the future of the credit system. We're not talking about a carbon credit system where it's centralized and then you'll be deducted. We're talking about a totally different approach where the individual owns their own identity, their own reputation. And then the bodies that actually want to say, do you want to work with this individual? They can weight the value of whatever they're telling them around if it's important or not. So what we're talking about is a decentralized reputation system that the person that's proving their reputation and the person that's accepting their reputation can actually change all the variables of what they feel is actually what representation should be. Now just think about that for a second, because that's a really complicated algorithm and calculation to even start. And when we talk about the current systems are what they call FICO scores. And if you didn't notice, you got like a mortgage FICO score, which is different than your consumer FICO score. But FICO is actually Fair Isaac Company Connected. So two dudes' last names, Fair and Isaac, connected. And they come up with an algorithm that then other organizations or entities, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, they come up with the data and layer the algorithm on to come up with a score. Now, it's a score that none of us really can own or control or affect. And I would even argue that if you don't like your score, you can go pay some money and it goes away. Now, that's not real fair, right? So within a system like this, fairness and people being transparent around what they do and what they say and who they are, or transactions, or even folks that come from other chains and systems, all of it is transparent and accurate. So I hope this is making a little bit more sense. Any other questions or thoughts?
Okay, I got another question. This is a separate question.
Okay.
So I've been looking at, I've been trying to find some information from like a divorce document, and I don't want to have to order the document. I just need the data because I need to apply it somewhere else. I just need, some dates. Do you have any suggestions other than, in my area, it would look like vital check. Are there other sources of this data, since it's all centralized, to take advantage of? I just want you to box.
I personally don't have an answer for your particular situation, but hopefully if these systems are adopted in the future, we could actually have answers for future generations, and at least a choice for future generations. For instance, within the Mexican ecosystem, well, you're talking about marriages. So let's jump into this one. So let's say someone wants to actually go and get a marriage. You would apply. This is the derived key for the unique marriage. So every one of them, and this is how you actually know the entities and cryptographically secure it. So there's going to be a unique key that actually drops onto here. That is what makes this particular unique environment. And then you upload photos, names, and then you apply. It goes through a process. If there's questions around identity, which, by the way, tomorrow night, for those that are not aware, there's a fair in the area that we're in, and there's going to be a concert. And some people know what I'm talking about. But the lady that actually originally started the digital marriage environment will actually be sharing a concert with her tomorrow. And they've done close to 40,000 marriages cryptographically online with a similar type identity system. It's not as slick as this, but basically all right out here out of Utah. First state to do it, first ecosystem, largest, provides nothing but benefit and value to the county and to the future. So imagine if someone like yourself could actually have all of your records right at your fingertips, and you could share them with people and then pull it back as you wanted. And it's not just birth records or marriage records, or in your case, I know, your amazing son or your husband passed away, so death records. You know, how do you record that? How does probate work? How does asset management works? How do you take assets? Maybe it's a vehicle. How do you move from one owner to another owner? All of this stuff can be done at your fingertips instead of, let's see if I'm logged into another, no, I'm not. Yeah, I am. So like, let's say we want to change ownership within an ecosystem here, right? You can actually go and change and share ownership. So it's a system that is basically for the people, by the people, and the people can actually control what it gets shared. And some people would say, oh, it's just blockchain or it's just crypto. No, it's so much more than that. This is an operating system for humanity that actually is built on 3 operating systems: one chain, one server operating system, and one phone operating system, and then all of the apps and organized systems in between it. So that's really what it is. Margaret, did I answer your question, and did you have any other things you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'm good here. I see someone else also. Phoenix has a hand up.
Phoenix?
So thank you, Michael.
Thank you. It's good to hear from your voice. And I know I have a task for you. I'll jump on it as soon as I can. Phoenix, did you have something you wanted to say? I know you've got a hand up there.
Yeah, I've been patiently waiting. Hi.
Go for it.
A few questions. I guess the main one would be in terms of digitally registering. For example, digitally registering, say, any license. I don't care what the license is. Right? If we're in this realm, in this dimension, on this timeline, why is it relevant to have I know there's many beings. I can no longer say certain things, but I could say lots of beings are in this realm that we live in, right?
Yeah.
So why is it so relevant to have a license or a certificate? I'm not arguing with you. I'm just would like a good debate. Why is it so interesting? Marriage or birth or etc. I just would like to know the answer.
One. What's interesting is I watched a video this last week of a gentleman who went through the same questioning process, and he was actually put in jail for 11 months because his name is Roger Ver, and he actually sold some fireworks, like M80 little fireworks, right? They're bigger than small little pop, but he sold them, and it wasn't that they were illegal to sell, but they made a law that you had to have a license if you were going to sell them. And so they literally put him in jail for 11 months because he didn't have the license. And so what you've got to do is you've got to look at the law, a legal system and lawful system. And then there's points where you can say, it's my right to not have to get a license. It's my right. For instance, the Supreme Court in the United States of America said, you actually don't have to have a driver's license to actually travel. Now, if you're going to pick up a passenger and charge them and deliver like an Uber service, you need to have a license to do that. But people go in systems, say, for instance, like insurance or registration or license or license plate. The systems are in place to force those things. The question is, what's the jurisdiction that they actually represent in? And then can we actually create enough of a unity to be able to go back to the spirit of the law, to the basis of your question, which is a beautiful question, Phoenix. Should we actually have to have those? The problem is, one at a time, they can pull one person over and run them through a process, a colonial-based process, which when I was reading some of the constitution within the Mexican government today, they actually didn't adopt colonial law, even like America did. They literally separated a lot of it. It was amazing to see how beautiful that constitution is. The question is, can it be enforced? And, the basis is legal versus lawful, jurisdiction, maritime law, water law, land law, all of it really applies. But we have to get enough of us together in a unified system that actually gives respect to all involved. This isn't just government versus non-government, or, a liberal perspective versus a non-liberal. It's literally, how can we come together and everyone have a fair, balanced, equitable life, where even law enforcement, because I personally, when I was young, that's what I wanted to do in life. I had a wonderful mentor and father, and he was an LA County Sheriff officer. I wanted to do that, but when I started understanding other sides of it, it was like, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. And I don't know about the quality of life there. And, when you start digging into it, it's like, there's a job where government needs to be able to play a role. And then there's a job where it's overreaching. And I think the basis of your question is, why do we have to even agree to that overreaching part of it? And I think the fine balance of everything that we're talking about and contemplating here today is, how do we find that happy medium where everyone can come together in peace and equity and balance? And it goes to what Danielle was saying earlier. We actually need to build parallel systems that are better than the centralized systems to create an alternative for choice. And I hope that at least answers a portion of your question. Yes or no? More question, thoughts?
You know me, I could go on forever, but at the end, okay, if we really want to go back, and as you know, you've read my, not recent, but my mission statement of my deck. Now, you also know that you gave me access to figure out who I am. So the founding fathers, hi. So all that being said, and that's just one side of that side. So when I wrote my mission, and I'm not saying me is the right way. I'm just saying, for example, when I wrote the ARC mission statement and I rewrote it 30 times, I sat there and went, I'm like, wait, I just had an epiphany. I'm like, who authorized my great greats directly who authorized them in the first place to write the Constitution? Now, mind you, I don't leave home without my Constitution. I carry it in my bag with me at all times, no matter what, because for a reason. But who gave them the right? Now, as time goes by, and I'm not saying the Constitution's wrong, I'm just saying there may be some ways that we can improve things, right? But who in the first place gave anyone authorization to write the Constitution, to come up with a plan, a financial system, and this, that, right, left, laws, legislature, etc., other than they did? Why did they? Because they could. And one person and two people and three had a great idea. Therefore, a bunch of others jumped on board. And more, therefore it became what it is to date, or should be to date, but it's being slandered ridiculously, and it's about to get really worse, as we all know. I hope you know. If you don't know, now you know. Now, at what point do we just sit back? I'm sorry, Michael, you know me. You know I'm going to speak my mind. Sorry, but I am me. At what point is it just okay to sit back and watch? Just, this is not what my grandparents, this is not what my founding father, my grandparents, this is not what my mother's side, my father, no, this is not what they wanted. Now, there are some things been planned, whatever. I'm not going to go into that. But I am going to say there is a way. I would refer you to Dune 2, Trailer 3. There is a way. It is a very narrow way, but there is a way. It's a very important one. Michael used to write it down, watch it. Just the trailer. At what point do we say, all right, this has just gotten to the point where it's being taken advantage of? And I assure you, I know exactly what you're saying on every level and beyond right now. I'm fully aware. But like, it really is important for us to stand up and, as you know, Michael, no one else, I deal with a lot. And I'm 100% Constitution, US, et cetera, but you know that I have my heart in many other countries, and you know that I'm 100% united globally, and I love. So at what point do we say, it's time to just everybody drop your egos, your narcissism, your past beliefs, your religion, everything at the door. Time to come together. And I will close with this when you're ready to close, Michael. Can you please close this session with a song? And I think you'll know why. And I think I finally figured it out after years from a wise one sending it to me. It's called Walls and Doors by Jackson Brown. You'll understand. I would love for you to close with that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll try and find the song. Thank you for your feedback and perspective, and thank your forefathers for what they did to help stand up the United States of America. So
Thank my mother's side as well. Yeah, thank my side. Yeah.
Margaret, did you have a question that you've got your hand up, or is that new or old?
No, I didn't intend for that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts?
Hey, Michael, it's Beck. How you going?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I just want to say, I guess, from what Phoenix was mentioning, and maybe anyone else on the call, that, our world is connected by submarine optic fiber cables. And 96% of our traffic runs through a fiber optic cable. And when you see a nation get connected to another nation, you see the world in a very different way.
Yeah.
And it means two things when we lay a fiber optic submarine cable. It means love, and it means the opposite of love. I'm not going to say that because we don't say that around here.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say, from my perspective, from my world where I come from, we are very interconnected. We are brothers and sisters. We are neighbors. We're all on a journey of life, trying to figure it out. We have to help one another. We have to serve one another. And when we lay these fiber optic cables in the Pacific, there's Japan, Australia, and the United States. And we're all going to be united together, serving one another, helping one another. There's from my perspective, I love what I do in my job. I love what I do in my job. And I think we all need to understand that our world is much more connected than we could ever imagine. But at this time, when everyone's searching for things to do, they're trying to find answers and questions. Where did I come from? What am I here for? What am I supposed to do? I think we're just here to serve one another and to love one another and to guide one another to the highest version of ourselves, or whatever that may be. So that's all I've got to say today. Thanks.
I think we can close up on that. You're spot on, 100% spot on. Thank you for your time. I hope everyone can join tomorrow or next week. And we'll go ahead and wrap this up with this video that was recommended, or at least this song. I don't know if it's the right one. Is this what you were talking about, Jen? Or Phoenix?
Ever since the world's existed, there's one thing that is certain. There are those who build walls Up with a smile, love. I'm thinking you already knew. For some it's always winter, while others have the spring. Some
Sorry, I pulled this out. Here we go.
people find good fortune,
Boy, oh boy.
while others never find a thing. Up with a smile, love. This is something you already knew. That's how it's always been, and I know you know it. There can be freedom only when nobody owns it. I'm gonna say that again, 'cause I know you know it. There can be freedom only when nobody owns it. Of what use is the moon if you don't have the night? Of what use is a windmill with no Quixote left to a fight? But this, my love, this is something you already knew. At some point on the horizon, sky can be confused with earth. Some people dream of God, while others dream of wealth. Up with this, my love, this is what you see out on the street. It's how it's always been, and I know you know it. There can be freedom only when nobody owns it. Let me say that again, 'cause I know you know it.